Technology is the most powerful change in the world of education.
Everything changes.
Welcome to the Emerging Technologies in Education podcast, delivered to you by Clever Books Company. Hello, listeners, and we welcome you again to the podcast series Emerging Technologies in Education. And I'm pleased to introduce you to our guest today. His name is Ger, and I think the best thing we can do is to give Ger the word to tell us which country he's from, what he does, and introduce himself. Here you go.
Thank you, Daria. My name's Ger Graus. I am the Global Director of Education for Kidzania. And the question, what country am I from, is an interesting one. I was born and grew up in the Netherlands, but I have, for what seems to be an eternity, lived in the United Kingdom. So I suppose I'm from two countries.
That's brilliant. Can you tell me a little bit more about Kidzania? What you do, guys, how you connected to education, and anything you want to share?
Yeah, Kidzania was set up in 1999 by a Mexican entrepreneur called Javier Lopez Ancona, and the first Kidzania opened in Mexico. In a nutshell, it's a city built for children. It's 2/3 size. And it's a city where, through the medium of role play, children can engage with the world of work, with an economy, because it has its own money and you can save and spend and earn. But probably much more children can engage with their aspirations. Children can only aspire to what they know exists. And what we know from our research is that children from certain parts of our society might not immediately think of becoming an airline pilot, for example. So as a city, Kidzania allows the children to experience, to be curious, to try things out, to do jobs to like and to dislike. And that works particularly well because inside Kidzania, grown-ups are there to be seen and not heard, so they can't interfere. There are now globally 24 Kidzanias, including London, and we are looking to open a further 20 or so Kidzanias in the next 10 years, including South Africa, France, the United States, Australia. So it will become a truly global set of cities.
Wow, that sounds really impressive. So this is like a little city, the model of a real one, but more for the kids, where they can select what they do and potentially find their aspiration for the future profession.
Yeah, and I think what we've got to remember is that in a world where our education system is increasingly about schooling and about children being taught, the opportunities for children to go somewhere for 4 or 5 hours and live their own lives, take their own risks, find their own likes and dislikes, those opportunities seem to become ever more rare. So in that sense, it's a place that makes a difference to children's learning, in the sense that it is experience-based learning. It's okay to get it wrong. It's okay to get it slightly less wrong the next time. You know, you're not going to get marked in red, or you're not going to get marked at all. And in an education system that's increasingly about the system rather than about the children, places like Kidzania are child-focused and child-driven.
This is brilliant. I think that school teaches a lot of things apart from real life. And I think Kidzania is something that is really useful for kids to gain the real life skills, at least in the play mode, but this is really, really good.
I entirely agree, and I think when we have to be very careful here and distinguish that it is not the school that is doing those things. I know hundreds, thousands of teachers who would love to engage in creative, experiential, difficult, challenging learning. It is the system that drives this. In the end, teachers are in the current system there to follow the direction of government. So we must be very clear that we do not lay the blame, so to speak, for much of the ills in education at the doors of teachers. We must be very clear where that comes from.
Yeah, I agree, because normally you're right. The government sets the rule of which skill set and knowledge set needs to be delivered in school environment, and then when people come to real life, it's not always, so to say, applicable. But this is my point of view, obviously.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. Okay. Can you tell me then, what do you think about technology in education? Are you positive or negative about it, and why?
Good question. I'm both. I'm positive, and I'm negative is the wrong word. I'm never negative, but cautious. I think we need to be a bit more sophisticated when we talk about technology in education and what we mean by that. It's often when you see technology in education, or you see adverts or articles, or indeed at conferences, technology in education is the latest iPad version or the latest iPhone version. We need to ask ourselves the question what it's for, and how we use technology, and in a sense what education's for. We try to we try to create a better world where our children are becoming better equipped in many ways, not just in terms of the world of work, better equipped adults than we are. That has to be the aim of our education system. So what about technology now and its use, and what about technology and its role in the future, and all sorts of ethical and moral questions that go with that. So if I can just for a minute perhaps unpack that. One of the areas that concerns me, the area where the word cautious comes in, are elements of technology as to what others do with the data that technology generates about us, for example. Yeah, so we need children to understand what cookies do. I'm just using a silly example. Or what signing up to something means. How globally visible they become through the use of technology. It's a child's democratic entitlement to know what happens to his or her information. And somehow we need the children to become versed and confident to address that within themselves and beyond there. So that's the first bit. I think then the second bit in terms of technology is technology and education has to be a good thing. By and large, just like technology and life is by and large a good thing. There are always downsides, but in a sense, compare the use of technology in education to the invention of the pen. It made life easier and more could be done. It is a tool to achieve good things. That's how it needs to be seen.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And by the way, in Kidzania, do you actually use any technology?
We use, there are technologies that are used. One, we use as a business the technology to collect data and to run the business itself. But in terms of jobs within Kidzania, there are across the globe technology-related activities. I think we need to be better at changing more quickly, as the real world does. And I think the issue for me also is, and it goes back to the whole learning agenda and the whole agenda around learning at Kidzania, is we don't do things per se. So people keep saying to me, you need to do more coding. And I'll say, well, what makes you say that? And the answer is, because it's in the national curriculum. Quite frankly, I don't care the national curriculum. The kind of technology activities that I would like to see more of in Kidzania is the ones that children naturally perceive as being part of their world and their possible future working world. So we need to have the word purpose in there all the time. Why does it exist? Why does it make things better? And then how do I use it?
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. And if coming back to education and technology, which technology can be a good supplement for education in your opinion? Is it going to be like mobile apps or like smart boards or simple projector on the wall or maybe some online portals with learning or e-courses or maybe electronic libraries? So which technology could be a good supplement for education and why do you think so?
I think I'm going to put a slight spanner in the works here. I think the technology that can be a good supplement for education depends on the quality of the teaching and of the teacher. It isn't. It doesn't. Technology doesn't replace something. It isn't instead of, but it enhances. It makes it better, quicker, more colorful, more fun, more real. And let me give you a very practical example that I often use with my children, and no doubt occasionally bore them to tears with. And that is when I grew up in the south of Holland, the technology that, as we know now, didn't exist. So if I got homework at school, the homework more often than not was find the correct answer. So what you did is school finished at 20 to 4 in the afternoon, you jumped on your bicycle, you cycled to the library, you picked up a book, and you found the right answer and you wrote it down. Incidentally, the library would then close at 5 o'clock, so you had to cycle really fast. So your learning times were dictated by opening and closing hours, for example. If I look at my children now, their library, if you wish, their access to knowledge is online. It's often called Google, it might be called Wikipedia, it might be called all sorts, but it's essentially in their pocket. The issue also for my children is not to find the right answer, sorry, not to find the one answer, but actually when they ask the question using the technology, 500 answers may come up. So the differences in skill sets are, it is not being able to read and find the one right answer, it is actually being able to judge which one of all the answers that you're given is most likely to be the correct one. So I think the exciting thing for me about technology in education is that very good teachers will use the technology to make for very good learning.
That's absolutely right. I was recently talking to one of the teachers from schools, and actually this teacher mentioned that kids have mobile phones anyway in their pocket, and they use those mobile phones for social interaction. And the point of this teacher was that the main goal of the teacher is to help kids convert those social interactions in their pockets and using the technology only for social into learning and help them to understand how to get the information out of the internet and how to sort and analyze it correctly and which technology could be really helpful for that. And I still remember as well that when I was studying, it was exactly the same like you do. You cycle to the library and you search in specific encyclopedia or something, the answers and so on. But now I think it is also really a lot of information out there if they use Google or Wikipedia, and this information they need to have a really good analytical skills in able to be able to analyze and put the information together and find really the correct answer and have a critical judgment probably as well.
I agree. I think we need to be in the bigger picture mindful of a number of things in addition to that. I entirely agree with you in terms of where at all, my personal view is where at all possible, schools and other learning establishments should allow children to use as much as possible their own tools for learning. Yeah, so let them use their mobile phones. I think integrate that. Good teaching would do this. What we need to be mindful of, however, and there is a however, is that children born into more advantaged circumstances are more likely to have the latest equipment. Children born into less advantaged contexts are less likely to have. We need to make sure that the possession of hardware doesn't become an inequality issue. And this is where the dilemma lies, because quite often children, my children, have probably got hardware that is better in many cases than the school has. So that's one of the issues. Disadvantaged children will have, if you wish, inferior hardware often, or none at all. So we have to be very careful that we approach this whole technology thing from the child's point of view, that we put ourselves in their shoes, and that we don't do the normal average middle class approach to education, and knowing that those above will be fine and not quite knowing what to do with those below. We have to be very blunt and very, 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 very frank about that. That's the first point. I think the second thing is we need to be respectful of the dilemma that schools find themselves in terms of risk, child safeguarding, firewalls, and all the educationally troublesome things that come with that quite often. And we need to look at being much clearer as to what actually can and cannot be done. I know, for example, from a previous life when I was CEO of the Children's University, I know that we had participating schools where children couldn't Google the word children. So that seems to me out of sync. We have some very significant perception and equality issues that we need to be always mindful of.
Correct. Totally agree with you on this point. So if technology is provided, it should be on the equal for all the kids, regardless the equipment they have. And that's why if it is school-driven or teacher-driven, it must be selected at the level that it could be used by all the kids, regardless the hardware. That's absolutely.
I mean, if sorry to interrupt, Daya, if I may be slightly rebellious, but if we look at the bigger picture, so all those huge technology companies that appear to be very skillful at paying as little tax as possible, perhaps there should just be a government levy on those companies that they provide the latest technology into schools pro bono. Yeah, if they pay so little tax in a number of countries, perhaps they can they pay less tax, and perhaps they can enhance their social and corporate responsibility in that way.
Yeah, I agree with you on this point as well. And then one more question I have to you, like coming back to the teachers who are who would be potentially the facilitators of using the technology in the classroom. Why, in your opinion, they may not accept using technology in the classroom, or maybe like reject or totally say like, I don't want to use any technology? So not in regards of the hardware only, but maybe some mobile applications, or like, let's say, virtual reality or augmented reality or Wikipedia or something else. Why do you think they might not accept it?
I'm not sure that I agree with the word with the wording "not accept." I think there are, for a number of reasons, without excuses, incidentally, because I think excuses are a nonsense. There are, for a number of reasons, reluctances. So one of the reasons that people might be, or I know are reluctant, or at times reluctant, is to do with risk. It is to do with, if I let the children use their own devices, how safe will they be? Who can access this? What's the quality of the firewall? We have become safety obsessed to the point where we are in danger of bringing up a generation of children who are so risk averse that there is no sense of social entrepreneurialism in those children, because they're not allowed to do anything. It is all by the safety book. Teachers are a victim of this too. They haven't written the book. So in that sense, they're a victim of that circumstance. Secondly, I think there is often a perception that children are much better with technology than teachers are. I'm not sure that that's true. I think if I look at my 12-year-old, she is much quicker and better at the use of her phone than I will ever be on mine. But that is not the sole purpose of technology. It needs to be technology as part of learning. And thirdly, I think why teachers might naturally be a little bit reluctant is that there are very practical things, of course, about what if it breaks down, I've got 30 children in the class and those bits. But I think we have approached technology in or governments globally have approached technology as an add-on. So it is about how do I use the whiteboard as, how do I use the iPad as, rather than as an integrated resource into teaching and learning. No teacher is asked to sit down and say to him or herself, how do I get children to use a pencil, a rubber, or a pen in the lesson? It is part of the whole education planning. We need to think about technology much more as tools and means rather than as an outcome per se. And that requires training and that requires development. So we need to give these things a little bit of time too.
I would agree to you, and I like your comparison, like using a rubber or something that like a ruler that you used to use in the classroom before, and you feel absolutely safe of using it. Is actually the time that needs to be like given for the teachers to get used to technology. Maybe some time and some training, and to give them that confidence, probably, that nothing is gonna break, or what they can do if something is going not the way that was planned.
And I think the other thing we need is we do need, which doesn't come easy I say this as a Dutchman now, it doesn't come easy to the English. We need a positive mindset. It seems to me that we're finding all the reasons not to do things, rather than embrace something that's new and embrace it as brilliant. I travel all over the world. I love my phone. And one of the reasons I love my phone is I can use my phone to see my family wherever in the world I am. How brilliant is that? So I think we need to look at this in a more enlightened, positive way, rather than in the old English way, always focus on the negative and find the problems.
Thank you very much, Ger. That's like brilliant points, and I really liked your opinion. And yeah, I think that listeners will find it also very useful with the tips. And if teachers are listening to this podcast, they would be also finding some confidence in that, because you're absolutely right that gaining the confidence is getting used to use. Same like with the mobile phone. Like before, we had landline, and everybody was cautious about using the mobile phone, and now it's all of a sudden a very useful tool that everybody likes taking with them, and you have the whole your life in the pocket.
And we need to be, and I'd reinforce this, we need to be patient. Patient doesn't mean lazy, but you know, I remember many years ago speaking to my grandfather, who was born in 1891 and could remember the first car in his village. The first car in his village belonged to the doctor, and a man walked in front of the car with a red flag warning people that the car was coming. It was probably doing 5-6 miles an hour. It's taken quite a while for everybody to drive. So that's not laziness, it's called evolution. And in that sense, we need to learn to be patient, we need to monitor it, and we need to look at it as a good thing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time, Ger, and I really appreciate your insights and thoughts, and I hope everybody will enjoy this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Everything changes.